I can't believe I have to say this. Why have we not seen all of the Epstein files? I know the whole world is asking this question. And the blame, a lot of it is also under the previous US administration and previous administrations as well, because if it was widely known that something like this was happening, why are we not seeing the files now as well? Now, I have my theory. My theory is that, and like a lot of people have speculated over the years, it goes very deep and very wide, and a lot of people will be implicated on both sides of the aisle. But then implicate them. But the pure rot that it will expose, I think, is what is the problem here. I don't think, in all honesty, that his story is the biggest story on that kind of exploitation. I think his story just came out, and it does implicate a current sitting president, and it did implicate and does implicate a ex-royal, and it does implicate a couple of really powerful men around the world that are extremely wealthy. And I think that net is quite big. But I think that net is bigger than what one expects it to be. And in a way, this is a deflection from how deep this goes down. Now, I've always been a bit of a fan of conspiracy theories. I like a conspiracy theory. It's fun. You don't have to believe the conspiracy theory. It's just my idea has always been that it makes you think a little bit further. You may not believe it, but it just like tickles the brain cells a little bit, going, okay. But this one is very tangible, but it always feels out of reach, just out of reach. Just when you think this movement, you see that it's just out of reach, as if a carrot is being dangled in front of us to give us this idea of something might happen, something might come out. Now, there has been explosive things coming out of the files that has been released and not been redacted up to the kazoo. But where are all these videos and the camera footage that was supposedly recorded in his houses, in his properties? Because that mysteriously has not been shown or been talked about. Why all the redactions? But not redactions of victims, redactions of other people's names. Years ago, there was this whole Pizzagate discussion and scandal. Well, it wasn't a scandal, it was a theory that was pushed out about Podesta and a pizza place. I can't remember what it was called anymore. Comet Pizza. And how there was a basement with activities taking place. And even though that theory, to me, was far-fetched, and you could never find and you could never see an ounce of truth in that particular one, you always knew there was something like that happening. There's always a pinch of truth in a lot of things, but it gets obscured by misinformation and by the wrong reporting of facts or obstruction by rich elites muddying the waters. But that it was funny when the Pizza Comet thing came out. And the whole discussion was, it's the left, it's the left, it's left, it's left, it's left. They're satanic, they're this, they're that. And I found it quite interesting because if you go look at a lot of cases involving activities with underage minors, the guilty parties always seem to come from certain groups. Not always, it's a generalization, but there's a bit of a track record here. It seems like it's always certain pastors, reverends, from the extreme right wing of state denominations that preach about women should submit to men. And then there's also these politicians on the right, but it always gets swept under the carpet. Matt Gates. And you think that, why is there not a bigger hoo-ha made of that then? But then you realize the people who own these media organizations are also the ones possibly covering it up. And they don't want the focus to suddenly go away from their ideal world of them being rich and controlling everything and all of us being serfs. So they bury anything that is not conducive to their beliefs or what they want or their strategy. And that scandal then just falls away. There's currently quite a big one happening in the US. Can't really say the names because it's alleged, but one of this family was convicted prior to it for fiddling minors. But you don't see that story getting mainstream attraction. The story about the guy who was supposed to be Attorney General, that died down very quickly. You don't hear about it very much anymore. That should be on the front page of everyone, of every newspaper, to this day still. It's this hypocrisy from the right wing who wants to protect our women and children, when we can just go down the list. In the UK, last year, 2025, we had the summer of riots, where it was reported that 40% of the people arrested during those riots have convictions for spousal abuse and child. Now, that went underreported. But if you mention it, then the right wing goes, yes, but migrants. You have to be opposed to all abuse. You can't cherry pick your abuse that you get enraged about. You have to be like, I do not condone any abuse. But when you start playing whataboutism, that's where the problem comes in, and that's where this divide between left and right happens. And I'm not condoning any of this. I'm just saying, if you're on the right, you have to be outraged at all of it. You can't have selective outrage. You can't have selective outrage if it's somebody of a different color. The outrage has to be clear that you are against this behavior. But that's where we are today. And to this day still, we don't know what's in the Epstein files. And that his wife, Melania, came out with this news conference, this press statement. This press statement was interesting, to say the least. And there's a theory that it might be the country that we are not allowed to speak of pressuring her to remind her husband that they have dirt on him. These are the kind of things that we have to take into consideration. We have to think about these kind of things. How dirty is he in this? How dirty and implicated is he in all of this? Because there's a lot of questions that's never been answered on her visa and how she came over to the USA. There's a lot of questions that's never been answered about cases that he was involved in that just disappeared. But that is a story for a rabbit hole for another video. But until then, let's have a think about why we have not seen the full extent of the Epstein files. Ciao.